Good evening, everyone. My name is Agelos, and welcome to our pilot episode of Tales of Tamriel. We are very excited to begin this journey with you, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to go over my motivation for creating this podcast, and what better way of doing so than in a story. I have been listening to podcasts for years, and this has always been a medium that I was really interested in. So when The Elder Scrolls Online was announced, I began listening to any podcast I could find concerning this game and anything Elder Scrolls related. I have been in love with Tamriel since I first played The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Morrowind was actually the very first game that I had bought with my own money back when I was about 15 or 16. I'm currently 27, so there's a span of years in there. And I remember going into my local GameStop and having some cash that I had saved from whatever it was I had been doing to earn the aforementioned cash. I don't really remember how I earned it, but knowing me, I tend to lean towards swindling money away from somebody rather than legitimately earning it. Anyway, there I was with cash in hand, looking over what games I could get for my new gaming PC. Then my eyes fell upon Game of the Year edition of Morrowind. This game looks so cool, I just had to get it. After purchasing the game and installing it, I plunged headfirst into Tamriel and immediately got frustrated. I mean, come on guys, I was young and unaccustomed to that type of open RPG. Pretty much any of these Elder Scrolls games are very daunting at the very first time you've stepped into them. As I was adventuring, I found myself getting lost, not knowing what I was doing, and after several hours, I just gave up. It wasn't until some years later, and after I'd matured a little and played several other linear-type RPGs, that I got more into the genre and decided to give Morrowind another chance. This time, it blew me away. I remember stepping into Tamriel, and I was stunned by how alive the world felt. The game seemed to go on, if you will, even if there wasn't anything I was doing to push it forward. The townsfolk seemed to have lives of their own. They had conversations with the other NPCs around them. They went about, did chores, and at the end of the day, they slept. It also amazed me how much time the developers had put into the lore of the game that made the game feel real by way of the books, the lore conversations you could have in the game. I couldn't understand why they would spend so much time doing this. I mean, let's face it. And be honest with ourselves here when you think about this. How many people actually read the books in the game or talk to an NPC that isn't related to a quest you were looking for? Few of you guys, right? I mean, other than opening the book a brief second to see, oh, did I get a skill point? No. You normally don't talk to people with conversations just to hear them talk. You just kind of space bar through it until you get to quest accepted. So much effort went in from so little notice from the gamer community. But now that I look back at it, I am glad they did that. This makes this game stand out from other RPGs out there. Let's fast forward a little bit and bring us more into the modern day. My wife, who is also my lovely co-host this evening, whom I will introduce shortly, we were out browsing at our local retailer, just looking around, not really after anything in particular. We had been playing MMORPGs together for a while, but at this point in time, we had hit a slump, and we wanted something new that we could do together. That's kind of like what we like to do. That's when I saw what will become my favorite game of all time, Skyrim. It had just come out a few months prior, and I turned to my wife and said, hey, we could both get a copy of this game, and we could play through this together. I didn't really know if she'd actually played an Elder Scrolls game before, so I wasn't sure if she would be interested, but she was quite ecstatic at the idea, so we each picked up a copy of the game, as well as the massive Skyrim strategy guide, and we began our adventure together. That brings us to the end of that story, and the first stepping stone to the journey that led us to here. I felt it was proper to rattle off, as my wife would say, the story that, because of the focus of this podcast is storytelling, I wanted to rattle it off into a story. There were several podcasts that I listened to about Elder Scrolls. Each one of them had a different style about them, but my favorite part of any podcast was when they talked about their playthroughs. This was where I got to sit down and listen to other people talk about their experiences in the game, and this in turn made me want to go home and jump right into the Elder Scrolls game of choice for me and find out that place they were talking about, try that mod they were raving about, or not do anything they suggested and go out and create my own story. That's the focus I wanted for my podcast, hence the title, Tales of Tamriel. Most podcasts go over game news, patch notes, etc. They might have their discussions about the hot button issues in the community, but most have done away with the playthrough section or only have it as a small section during the introductions of what have you been up to this week? But not here. Yes, we're going to go over game news. We'll go over patch notes when the game goes out if it's pertinent to the conversation, and we'll have small discussion topics that we'll go over briefly, but the main section will always be the playthrough. What we did this week, what did we discover, anything about the world of Tamriel we like from the perspective of our characters. Since the game's in closed beta, we'll not be talking about any beta experiences at this time until the NDA lifts, but we will focus on some of the older titles until the launch of the Elder Scrolls Online, and possibly even afterwards. And we welcome you to journey with us as we brave the wilds of Tamriel. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Agelos, and I will be the lead host for Tales of Tamriel. This evening, my co-host will be my lovely wife, Thais. Thais, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you got into the Elder Scrolls universe.
Hello. Well, let's see. What got me into Elder Scrolls? I think I first started off with Oblivion, and I played it on Xbox, and I have to say I really didn't like it. For the same reasons that my husband didn't. I felt lost at every turn I took, and I remember going around the game for about 2 hours just jumping because of that massive athletic skill that for some reason seemed to be so important. And it took a really long time for me to adjust to the game. After a while I liked it, but I didn't really play it for very long. It wasn't a game that had really interested me at the time. I was more into Zelda and Final Fantasy. Those were my games of choice. And then when Skyrim started to be announced, it looked absolutely fantastic, and I really wanted to try it. And when Jello suggested to me that we play it together, I was just so excited because it just looked epic. Everywhere you turn, it just looked epic. And when we first started it up, I think it took both of us about 2 hours to create our tunes, how we wanted them to look, what we were trying to portray in game. And that is what really got me hooked, is that in Skyrim, you really do become your character. There are so many choices and so many different things you can do. And I have so many pictures of my tune doing all kinds of things in Skyrim, because everything you did was just, you became that character. And that's what really got me into the Elder Scrolls, was definitely the experience I had in Skyrim.
Awesome. That's so cool. We're going to go into our next section here, which we will go over game news. We have only a few topics I really want to go over today. And the first one I'm going to let my wife, Thais, she's going to take over because this one was something she was really cool about. ZeniMax announced the voice acting cast for the Elder Scrolls Online. So what can you tell us a little bit about what they announced? Like, what was going on?
Well, this was amazing for me because the first name that stuck out was Michael Gambon, who, if you don't know, plays Albus Dumbledore in Harry Potter. And I am a gigantic Harry Potter fan. So when I heard his name and then I heard who he was playing, it was just perfect. He's playing the Prophet. And, I really could not picture anyone else to play that character. His voice is just amazing, and how he portrays everything. It really excited me. That's not the only one that was quite amazing to find out. There's a John Cleese to play Sir Cadwell, which after
Doesn't he play what all does he play in? I know that name.
Monty Python. If you're a
Oh.
fan of Monty Python, then you know John Cleese. He's done a lot of other stuff, but the Ministry of Funny Walks is definitely one that everyone will remember.
We're not really going to talk about the beta experience, but both of us have been in it. We're allowed to say that as part of the NDA. But I'm excited now that she said who he was. I know exactly the character, and they mention it, I think, in the post who it is that he plays, and it fits his personality really well.
He plays this just insane man in the very first section, and it's just great to hear his voice because when you think of him, you think of Monty Python, and you think of him being just a little strange and not quite there. It works. And then another one that kind of took me by surprise was Kate Beckinsale
I
playing
love
the.
Kate Beckinsale.
Well, she's kind of hot. Even I can say that.
I I will go forth and profess my allegiance to the Ebonheart Pact right now. But when I heard Kate Beckinsale was playing uh, the Queen of the Aldmire Dominion, that alone almost swayed me. And I've been a diehard Nord since Morrowind, so it was tough not to go, ooh.
I have to admit that even that cannot sway me. I am love the Dark Elves. I will always love the Dark Elves. That couldn't sway me, but that was still pretty interesting to find out that she is going to be a part of the Elder Scrolls. Now there's a couple other names. Alfred Molina, who he the only title that I I can remember more than anything else was his role in Prince of Persia because it was just really a really neat role. I know you'll remember he played
Yeah, I'm trying to grasp, and I can't at the moment.
he was the leader who ran the races with the llamas. I think it was the
Oh,
llamas.
this I remember now the ostrich racer.
Ostriches, yes.
Right, right.
It was, yeah, I like him. I do. He was pretty neat. Another big name is Bill Nye. Now, he's been in a lot of things, but most people I think will remember him in Shaun. Was it Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah,
Playing the dad.
yep, he was the dad in Shaun of the Dead. He also played, I believe it was Victor in the Underworld series.
Oh
So,
yeah.
I'm who does he play in here?
Let's see. He plays. Not can't even remember what name that I just said.
Bill Nye.
Oh, okay. He plays a merchant prince.
High King Emmerich. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Uh, I'd be interested to see if ZeniMax does any kind of interaction because, like, he's already worked on other works, like other movies with Kate Beckinsale, and I mean, yeah, he's the leader of the Daggerfall Covenant. But I'd be interested if they do any kind of interaction between the two of them because as actors, they've already worked together, and I'd like to see if with voice acting if any of that would come into it because they've already worked together on several movies, so that would be kind of cool. Is that everyone that we're looking at?
Well, there's Malcolm McDowell, who plays the key figure, Molik Ball.
I love this guy. When I saw his face, I'm like, oh, I hope he's Malik Ball.
I think that he'll do really well playing Molik Ball because he's really known for playing a lot of villainous characters in most movies that he plays. So this was a great role for him. And when you think of the main bad guy, you definitely want someone who's really good at being evil.
I think he's played a lot of negative roles in the past. Not negative roles, but the bad guy roles in the past. Okay. Let's see. I guess that would be it for that topic then. The next big game news is the ESO receives a mature rating by the ESRB. And I will pull this up here because I wanted to read word for word what ZeniMax had said. They posted on January 22nd on Facebook that the ESRB advised us that it has given the Elder Scrolls Online a mature rating. While we may disagree with the ESRB's determination, we do not plan on challenging the rating, and we are unwilling to change the game's content to achieve a different rating. The game we have created is one that we want our fans to be able to play. As a result of the ESRB rating, we were in the process of promptly updating everything that's required rating and age gates, including game trailers, websites, and ads. Thanks for your understanding. We can't wait to welcome players into the Elder Scrolls Online soon. Now, I was ecstatic when I saw this rating.
Me too.
It just Elder Scrolls. The one thing I love about the Elder Scrolls is the no holds bar lore. It is dark. It is cutthroat. It is like, I mean, everything about it is not for kids, if you will. I mean, it's not like a horror survival type game, but a lot of the quests and stuff like that are of a somewhat um, adult type theme. I mean, if you look at the lore, one of the major things in the lore that most people probably wouldn't know is the wild hunt of the Bosmer. They were actually known cannibals, and they would actually, when they killed their enemies in battle, they would eat them. That whether it was an animal, whether or not it was a man or other other elves, they would eat them. Cannibalism tends to be a kind of adult subject. I don't know if they would ever show that because I think there was a Q&A session where someone had brought that up in one of the Q&As asking how are you going to portray this, and I think ZeniMax kind of at the time they were going for a teen rating, so they were like, well, we're not going to really actively show this or anything like that. We're just going to say, it's in the lore. Another thing is if you guys played Skyrim and all right, my wife
I
wants to take
was
this one.
just I was just gonna say that one sentence, the cannibals of Markarth. I will never forget that quest chain. It was so good and so detailed that that quest chain actually made me sick to my stomach. Which, if it can do that, then they're doing a really really good job. I tend to like all the horror movies and things like that, but for something to make me sick to my stomach, they did a nice job.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I remember running into that quest and literally just talking to the people around the table, the way they were saying it. I remember looking down at the butcher and the butcher looking up at you, and you say, "Wait, I know you from somewhere." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm the local butcher, the bloodiest meat in all the Reach." And he starts having this really creepy laugh. And at that point, I felt sick to my stomach too. I'm like, "Oh dear." I'm like, "Please tell me I didn't buy from that merchant. Please tell me I didn't buy from that merchant." So I definitely liked the fact they went with a mature rating. I know they were kind of going for a teen rating on these games to try to bring in a greater audience, but let's face it. I mean, if we really want to talk about the ESRB rating, it doesn't mean anything. I know legally you have to get it rated by this group, but how many people, whether they're young adults, our kids, our parents, really follow it? The parents seem oblivious to what ESRB ratings actually stand for. I mean, if you look at Grand Theft Auto, for instance, that thing was probably what was it? Grand Theft Auto 5 sold $12 million on the first 3 days. I think I remember reading that somewhere. Like, that's how much money it grossed. Obviously, they're not all adults, because let's face it, the gaming of adults it sharply declines after about the age 25. There's still this hardcore gamers out there that still play, but if you talk to, and if you got a sample of adults, it drops off. So a lot of people who buy games are the young adults, The young adults in college are kids and stuff like that. No one cares about the rating, to be honest. This mature rating will now allow them to bring in things, I hope. I don't think it's going to change anything for launch, by the way, but I'm hoping what happens is they'll be able to use this rating later on to bring in some of the things that make the game feel more real. Blood splatter, some of the darker quests, things of that nature that they maybe tried to keep out of the game to get that teen rating.
This rating I think is perfect. It it will really allow them to do everything that they need to do to make this a classic Elder Scrolls game. And even though it has a mature rating, I don't feel this game being as harsh as other mature games. Like my husband said, Grand Theft Auto is pretty gruesome in the themes that it has, but with Elder Scrolls, it's all about the lore and the story, and this really gives them a chance to do this game justice. It really made me happy to hear that they were going with the mature rating.
All right, that's awesome. I'm really happy about that. The last piece of news we're going to go over is actually going to be our discussion topic for the night. We're going to go over this really quickly because this is something that, as MMO players, and we have been vet MMO players for years now, both of us have an extensive rating background in World of Warcraft, Rift, played games such as Guild Wars 2. No, she says Terra, and I will not advocate that at all. I do not. And Final Fantasy, I played both 11 and we're playing 14 now. Fantastic games. But the PvE, we've always been PvEers. I enjoy PvP and I have to have it in my game because it gives me something to do. But to say I go into it once a week would probably be a lie. To say I go into it once a month is maybe. But I remember playing DOAC, Dark Age of Camelot, for you guys, and actually a lot of the people working with ZeniMax Online are from the old Mythic Entertainment Studios, Paul Sage for one, and they were the kind of the head starts of Dark Age of Camelot. So this three-faction Alliance versus Alliance, that they call it now, really started there, and I actually enjoyed that type of PvP. But that's not what our discussion topic is about. ZeniMax issued a Twitter announcement earlier this week saying that they will be preparing a bunch of different discussion topics and Q&As and developer videos about the PvE aspect, player versus environment aspect in the Elder Scrolls Online. If you guys had seen, they had released a developer playthrough earlier in the week, showing off a little bit about the multiplayer player versus environment content in Elder Scrolls. What do you like? So far, they've only showed the video. We're going to discuss that in a minute. But what else are you hoping that they're going to show in this multiplayer PvE content? What are you hoping to see out of what you can do with your friends?
I really just want there to be a lot of chances for us to explore the world together. Things that you don't even need a large group, even if it's just me, you, and one other person. I want that content to be immersive. I want it to be just enjoyable, and I want the world to be large. I want it to feel like we can live in this world with our friends. And when we go up against large bosses in the world, I want it to be difficult. I want to die 5 times before I'm able to beat this boss with my friends.
I agree.
That's what I want. I'm looking for the content that we can explore the world and the difficulty level where you have to concentrate and spend time. That's what I look forward to in my MMOs.
Right. I agree. I definitely agree with that. I really don't know whether or not we're going to see anything like on the elusive adventure zones that they keep promising us. But I do agree with your points of Elder Scrolls is nothing if not immersion. getting into the world and feeling like you're part of it. I have to feel that when I play. And MMOs are time investments. Anyone who says not or they want to get stuff quickly is duping themselves. I mean, MMOs in general were meant to be time investments. You build time in there, you make acquaintances and friends. I still have friends that I've made from my first MMO, Ultima Online, when I was 14. It's insane how these relationships grow, and you get these people, and you follow them around. Some follow you from game to game, some kind of stop gaming, and you just keep in touch with them because they become your friends.
I still have friends from my very first MMO, which was years ago, Maple Story, that I still talk to this day because when you make friends in MMOs, sometimes they are just lifelong friends because you have that interest with them. And even though I'm gonna get picked on here for mentioning Maple Story,
That is very true. But actually, speaking of lifelong friends, a little bit of insight on this, just because we actually had one of our both now mutual friends. Actually, he was my best man, or not best man, but he was one of my groomsmen in my wedding. That was actually an MMO friend of Thais. We met, and I needed a groomsman because I had my best man who will probably join this podcast at some point. Hint, hint, wink, wink. I know you're listening. Um, and he was my best man, but other than that, I didn't really have a lot of other people to pick from, and she had
yep.
a million bridesmaids, it seemed like. So I had to find other people, and one of her friends that that I met and I actually really liked. Um,
I have met him from Life, and I've known him for wow, so many years, and we talked through email and phone calls and text messages, but we had never actually met in real life. And when he needed a groomsman, I thought to myself, well, why don't we invite this person? And everyone thought it was really strange, but that just goes to show one of those lifelong friendships you make in MMOs, and he turned out to be the groomsman in our wedding. It was amazing.
that was really cool. But again, that's one of the things that MMOs give. It's that sense of community that brings people in, that keeps people coming back even after, we'll say, the content gets old or whatever the case may be. Content still has to be there so you can play and make friends. Um, the playthrough video, let's discuss this a little bit. They talked through, and there were some major points they talked about, and one of them was overland bosses, free roaming bosses that will walk around. Now, for people who don't know, an overland boss is a boss tends to be a monster you could not take solo. It will wreck your day and make you cry. It's a group encounter that's not instanced, that you may just be out there, I don't know, for the people who like to gather. I'm out there picking my flowers, gotta find my corpse rot flower. Oh, crud, there's a giant mud crab. That type of overland boss that you will then have to run back to town, send out your messages in your guild going, there's a giant mud crab wants to eat my face, and I need assistance on killing it. What do you feel about these overland bosses? What do you hope that they provide to the game?
After watching the video with this overland boss, I felt it was too easy. That's what it looked like to me. It didn't have enough health. It wasn't wrecking their day enough. It really wasn't. I feel like it really should be something where it takes some time, and one hit should take away half your health, and you got to keep moving, and you got to think about what spells you're going to cast to stun or to slow it. I I really now the video was great. I'm excited to participate in these bosses, but I definitely think it needs to be harder. It needs to wreck some lives.
That's my wife, ladies and gentlemen. She is the one who feeds on your tears. I agree with this. Overland bosses are fun, but they're meant to be dangerous. This harkens back to any of you old school MMO players will remember Dark Age of Camelot, and they had some overland bosses. Will remember Ultima Online and its oh crud, I can't remember the name. It's special spawns of some kind. I wish I could remember what it was now. It wasn't a rare spawn. It was they had a name. There was something lore wise. I can't remember, but everyone I'm sure will remember what I'm talking about. Like there's you got titles for it. There was one for like rat slayers, demon slayers. Anyway, they were very difficult bosses that you literally had to get everyone in the world to get. Now, another game that went in the complete opposite direction, at least at the start, Guild Wars 2, was all about overland bosses. They were fun at first. This is the narrow, it's a very, very thin line of what is fun and what is too difficult, especially in these overland bosses, which in the video they were saying this was supposed to kind of get people wet their feet a little bit into group content. But with overland bosses, if it's too easy, people will do it once and be done. And that's it. If it's too hard, people will never want to do it. There were uh, overland bosses in World of Warcraft in the original and Burning Crusade that were pretty big deal, but they actually got so difficult near the end that no one wanted to do them. It proved to be too much work for too little reward. I think ZeniMax really needs to balance out these overland bosses in such a way that they can there's a reward for doing them. That when they're up, you want to go kill them. You want to find the people and kill them off. But don't make it so easy that you can literally just walk away from your keyboard. I mean, Guild Wars 2 did this for a lot of their bosses where pretty much you could just spam the default ability and it was win after 30 seconds. They changed that up, however, in one of the later patches with Tequatl the Sunless. He was beastly and made people cry. It took two weeks, I think, for the first kill for the people to figure it out because they had mechanics. But most overland bosses, you can avoid mechanics. You just zerg them, if you will. But ZeniMax, I think, will need to come up with a way of forcing people to adhere to mechanics. If there's something you need to do, like you're fighting a giant Atronach, there's got to be a way to force you to stop killing the Atronach and maybe go kill the people summoning it. Like they show up to strengthen it, and if there's enough people in the way, old mechanics of the guy's sitting there channeling a heal. If you have enough people, you'll be able to just go by it. They need to figure out a way of blocking it that you cannot avoid mechanics.
I completely agree. That was one thing that always frustrated me in Guild Wars 2 was how people could just ignore mechanics. Same thing in in WoW. When people ignored mechanics, even when a fight was easy, I'm the kind of person where I still want to do the mechanics. I still want to do the fight the correct way, and my husband knows this in dungeons. I don't want to do speed runs. I want to kill everything. I want it to eat my face. I want to play the game how it was meant to be played. And if there are mechanics, they need to make sure that you do the mechanics to win. That's really what they need to do. But even if it doesn't quite play out that way, as long as the difficulty is there without having to do the mechanics, it has tons of health or it hits you like a ton of bricks, that would still be worthwhile.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. There needs to be difficulty in these things. Um, I have another thing I want to say about overland bosses, but I'm actually going to bring this into the last part of this discussion. The next part is teleportation to friends. Did you see any of the teleportation mechanics in the game? How do you feel that's going to work? From what it looked like to me, anyway, was they want to make you so you can play with your friends and find your friends. I'm not a big advocate of teleportation in games. It makes the game world feel small. Um,
I have to completely disagree. If the game world is gigantic, even with a mount, if it takes you 45 minutes to go from town A to run to town B, by the time I get to town B, I'm bored and I forget why I was heading there in the first place. I am a huge advocate of teleporting. I love the instant gratification of I have to go here. Bam. I am now there. Then you can complete what you needed to go there to complete. You can explore the world quicker. Now, it to me it doesn't make the world seem smaller. It actually makes the world seem bigger. If they need to put in teleportation to get around the world, then the world is obviously too big to walk from area to area. I I enjoy the thought of teleporting to your friends. I really do.
Well, how do you feel about with teleportation that the people who are going to speed run to level 50 in this game to reach the so-called end game, whatever it may be for them, whether it's the adventure zones, whether it's the race for the crowning the emperor, whatever the case may be. There's going to be the people who plow through content. MMOs generally have that type of people of the MMO locust, if you will, that jump from one to one, and they just seem to devour content. Do you not feel that teleportation uh, kind of helps out or encourages this type of behavior?
I really don't because them type of people are going to do that even if there wasn't teleportation. They are still going to find ways to speed through content. Now, if they want to speed through and not enjoy the content how I would enjoy it or how you would enjoy it or how 80% of the other players would enjoy it, that's all on them. But I still feel like teleportation is something that is definitely needed, regardless of how those quote unquote bad players want to use it to their advantage or you think to a disadvantage. It definitely needs to be in the game.
Right, right. Well, on the upside, this is one thing I'm really happy with is they did this in other games as well. Um, but they add a cost. If you're at a way shrine, which they did this in Elder Scrolls, the Dawnguard expansion, they had the way gates, the way shrines in the Dawnguard area. You could teleport as long as you were at them. I'm fine with that because if you're at one of these way shrines, you should be able to teleport no matter where you go. They do have an option, which is kind of like a recall or a recall type spell from other games or a Hearthstone in World of Warcraft or
That
um,
just makes me think of Recall from Baldur's Gate, where you couldn't teleport, but if you needed to go to town for something, you used the recall potion and it took you right back to the dungeon that you were in.
pretty close. Yeah, yeah, definitely something like that. But they're adding cost to the teleportation. It's free if you've trekked your way to a way shrine. And again, this is going off of beta experiences and beta videos that we've all seen it and Q&A from the developers. I'm hoping that the teleportation, like you can do this, they will allow you to randomly pick a way shrine. Like you could just be stranded out in the middle of Skyrim somewhere going, man, I'm overloaded with stuff. I need to go back and see a vendor. I need to go do all this different stuff, but I don't want to trek all the way to town, or whatever the case may be. You can open your map. You can click on a teleportation spot. As of right now, it's just way shrines, which I hope they keep. I don't want to ever see people teleport to dungeons or places they visited, such as in Skyrim or in Oblivion. I think that really takes away. Getting close is fine. Getting directly to, not so much. There needs to be a little bit of a trek. But you can do this, I think, every hour or half hour. I'm not really sure. We'll need a confirmation. But you can click on a way shrine and teleport there. That's your recall. I hope they actually add a cost and make it substantial. If you have the money, great. Teleport away until you're broke. I don't care. But it should be something where you have to weigh in your mind going, is this really worth the gold? Or can I take 30 seconds and run there? If it's pennies, if you will, who's going to care? They're going to teleport everywhere. But if there's an actual substantial cost, and it'll make people think going, well, if I teleport, I might not be able to repair my armor and weapons. What do I do? Is it really worth saving 30 seconds when I could just run there? And judging from an Elder Scrolls game, it all being about exploration, you're missing that opportunity to explore when you use those teleportations. When you have to teleport, that whole point A to point B of the journey and everything in between is gone. You're just at your destination. Rather than experiencing the journey, you are just at the end.
But again, if you have to unlock this way shrine first, then you went through the whole journey to get there in the first place. And in a game, in all Elder Scrolls games, you always go back to previously visited areas for whatever reason it may be. In Skyrim, I know that I went all across that map multiple times because there were things that I needed or things that I wanted to see. And even if for some people it takes away that journeying from area to area, you A will go back there anyway because you always return to places in Elder Scrolls games because there's always something to see and do. And B, you've already journeyed through it to unlock it in the first place. It's just a convenience, and it's a convenience that I like being in my games.
Right on, right on. It's definitely on the player of what they think about it. So, I mean, if you really don't want to use it like me, don't use it. Now, your friends, and my wife, for instance, she'll probably be mad at me going, just teleport. And I'll be like, no, I'm walking.
45 minutes later, he finally gets to the town that I'm in, and I'm bored and I'm ready to do something without him. But, if he wants to walk and I'm 5 levels ahead, that's on him. It's not my fault.
That just means she has to carry me through all the content I can't do by myself. All right, moving on to the next part of this video, the Dark Anchors. If you've ever played a game like Warhammer or Rift, this will be very reminiscent for you. These are going to be world events that pop down out of the sky, if you will, for the lore reason, for the lore nerds and all of us. Essentially, what these dark anchors are the servants of Molag Bal are attempting to merge the plane of Mundus with Cold Harbor. And they're doing that through these Daedric machinations known as dark anchors, which latch on to these different points within Tamriel and attempt to pull Tamriel towards the Daedric plane of oblivion.
How deviant. It sounds amazing.
I remember playing Rift and I really enjoyed the Rift system, and the public quest system in Warhammer was also this way, at least at the start. But this is something we'll get into here that I want to talk about the shortfalls of those games that I hope ZeniMax actually brings into Dark Anchors. Base, what did you feel when you saw the Dark Anchors?
I think it's a great idea, but I always enjoy that kind of open content in the world for anyone to just join in and play together. One, I in Final Fantasy 14, the Fate system, that is just phenomenal to me because it doesn't matter what you're doing when it pops up, you can just run over and explore it. And this I could see will work for you because no matter what, you're going to have to return to an area to complete a certain dark anchor for whatever reason that may be. It's a great idea. What I think they need to make sure they do though is balance the difficulty of the dark anchors and how they're going to tailor it to how many people are there participating in this specific event. That is what worries me about this.
That's a perfect point. That was one of the things that I was actually thinking of and what I wanted to bring up. She read my mind. You'll find she does this a lot, and we kind of have this little synergy between the two of us. But yes, one of the major downfalls that I experienced when playing Warhammer Online, the public quest system was a blast. I bought the game when it first came out, and I played um, with my buddy who's going to join us on this podcast eventually, as he remembers our epic. I need some help. Too late. I'm already halfway up the hill. He'll know what I'm talking about there. Um, they were fun at first because everyone was leveling together, everyone was going through the zones, and there were people to help. I went back and played sometime afterwards on a second character, and there were public quests I could not even beat because there was no scaling in that game, for one thing. So I would get up to a certain phase of the public quests because the first ones were meant to be soloable, and then it would increase in steps, like just like finishing steps of a quest. Every time you finish a step, it got harder and harder in the different waves, and eventually I would not be able to finish it, which would get me out of the reward, and it kind of made the world feel stagnant, if you will, because they were either always up, the timer ran out, there wasn't anything going on. Um, Hopefully ZeniMax looks at these dark anchors and finds a way of scaling to a certain point that you need a certain amount of people, but I don't think you should need 50. I think a light party, 4 people, should be able to pull off a any given dark anchor. Um, I think the reward should be a little less, but you know,
I don't completely agree with that. I feel that there should be some that are for small parties, but if I remember correctly, there were some in Rift. Some of the rifts in Rift were made for raid groups, which I thought that was really interesting that they had to be activated and then they were a raid rift. Now, if some of them want to be for small parties, that's great, but make sure you tailor it and you scale it to how many people are there. But then if some of them want to be difficult for a large group of people, they should have that option as well.
yeah, I can see what you mean there. Here's another question I'll have for you here for this discussion topic. How do you keep the overland bosses and the dark anchors relevant? I know the dark anchors are specifically tied to the Fighters Guild. That's how you gain ranks in the Fighters Guild and things of that nature. Um, that was already confirmed by ZeniMax. How would you suggest that ZeniMax Online keeps these things, like makes people want to do them, that they don't grow stagnant after you've done them once or twice and the novelty has worn off?
That's really difficult to answer. There's no real good answer there. The only thing that I can think of would be that after some time has gone by and those areas are not visited as frequently, either add different rewards that make people want to go back, add pets or mounts or special weapons, make people want to do them. Add more to those events that people want to experience. You just have to make sure a player wants to go back. And why does a player play MMOs? For gear, for the experience, for the pets and mounts. And if it's feeling like people aren't visiting, then change it. Then make it different and increase the payout. That's all you really need to do. But in a lot of games, people ignore that fact and they go, "Oh, well, they're not visiting it. It's all right. It's fine. If they forget about it, that's whatever." But don't let them forget about it. After time goes by, just add something on to that event.
Awesome. I agree. One of the things I was thinking about is I love mount and pet collecting, but I don't know if that's going to happen in ZeniMax or in Elder Scrolls Online. So don't take our word here as truth, because I know the only mounts they've confirmed at launch are horses and stuff. But I agree with collectible items, such as barding and things of that nature.
Do you have any idea how many pets exist in nature? I mean, how many horses exist in nature? There's a lot of types of horses out there. So that could actually work if it's just horses. Make them all different colors since there's tons of different colors, there's tons of different breeds. This could actually work in our favor.
All right, you got me there. You got me there. One of the things that I was thinking of is they announced the veteran point system, which is a way of progressing your character past the level cap. You'll need veteran points to equip certain amount of gear. Like instead of there being a level cap, there will be a veteran level cap. So you'll get a sword that's level 50, but the veteran level is 15 or whatever the case may be. I'm speculating here because they haven't really went into it a lot. But this is the general vibe what we're getting. If they offered a reward system that people could go back and do these anchors and get rewards for veteran points and progress their characters, people would go back and do them. Even low level ones, you don't want to make it that people that's unbalanced, that people can go back to a low level zone and do all the events and get the same reward, because there needs to be a payout and an incentive to go do the harder stuff. So veteran reward system could definitely, or the veteran point system could definitely add some life into these systems. The other thing I was thinking about was crafting. Crafting is, let's say it's kind of most games have it that it's a boring system, let's face it. You level to max and then you're done. Then you're a vendor, if you will. You gather some mats, you put stuff up there, but it normally gets left behind by the raid content or the PvP stuff. But ZeniMax has confirmed that crafting gear would be as powerful as endgame dungeon gear, endgame adventure zone gear, endgame PvP gear. You'd have multiple different ways of getting the equipment. They might vary a little bit by stats. Maybe you need a certain kind of stat that you can only get from here, that kind of thing. But what I think would really be helpful is rare materials that drop from these things, and only make them drop from this. Make it so that you get an Oblivion infused ore, or Oblivion infused plank, or Oblivion infused flowers, anything like that. That make it super rare. Like if there's 100 people doing a Dark Anchor, make maybe one of them get one of these pieces. That person will then go, oh dear, I either made myself some money, because I can sell it to a crafter, or I'm a crafter and I can now make that awesome potion of invincibility, or that awesome sword of slaying everything, whatever the case may be. If there's a reason for people to go back and farm the events, people will go back and farm them. That's what I think they need to do. They need to add something that's either a collectible, as they said, or a crafting mat that's rare, can only be gotten from those specific events, or having the veteran points. I think that would definitely help.
That's actually a really interesting point. One way to get people to go back to lower level events, the open events, would make it so that a special crafting mat only drops when you hit a certain level from that event. It could be a level 20 event, but this amber infused ore will only drop from this event if you're level 40. That is one way to make people go back and do these old events, because people will want these mats.
Right, right. Hopefully ZeniMax does something like that, because I hate when I see content go stale and people no longer do it. But I think we went a little long on our discussion topics there. So now we're going to get to the main subject of our podcast, the Tales of Tamriel. This is our personal story time, if you will, where we go around and we ask each host, and they will regale us with what they did in the Elder Scrolls universe since we last spoke to them. As always, ladies first. So my wife Ace, you may take it away with what have you been doing in the Elder Scrolls universe?
Well, I think to start off, I'm going to tell a small little fun story that I I always go back to this story. And it was when I first started Skyrim. And I was one of those low levels and my skills weren't very high yet. And I'm exploring and I come across this little area and there's all kinds of mammoth tusks and there's this little campfire and I'm the kind of sneaky stealthy type, so I'm hiding and I have my bow out and I see this gigantic 12-foot giant, and in my head I thought, oh, all right, I can take this guy, I'll shoot an arrow at his butt cheek and everything will be fine. And I'm hiding behind this rock and I see this giant. He's just kind of pacing around this fire with his club over his shoulder. And I peek out from behind the rock and I shoot him, and his health doesn't budge. But then the ground starts shaking. So I think, all right, that's all right. I'll hide behind this rock again. And my little stealth icon starts to shrink, but it doesn't disappear completely. And I look at the giant. The giant, he completely forgot about me now. But the ground is still shaking, and I can't figure out what in the world is going on. And I figure I'll look around. So I look behind me, and there's this gargantuan mammoth just running full speed at my character, and I froze out of fear because there's no way my dinky little iron arrows are gonna take down this 12-ton mammoth. So I get out of stealth and I start running, and the whole world is shaking. And then I have the giant following the mammoth following me, and I'm trying to sprint out of sight. So my first encounter with the giant did not go very well. And that's definitely my first very fond memory of Skyrim was the giant that I almost killed, but not really. Then the mammoth that pretty much ate my face.
That's awesome. Um, is that's the end of your story time for today?
Yeah, for today, I figured
All right.
I would make it easy.
Okay. All right. Well, now it is the time that I always enjoy from these podcasts, and that's the story time for me. Um, little background. In lieu of making this podcast, I decided that I was going to start over in Skyrim. I wanted something to talk about, and I had some stories and stuff from the past that I wanted to bring in, but I decided, you know what? I'm going to start from scratch, and we're going to chronicle the adventures of Agelos the Nord through Skyrim. I also decided on this. There were going to be a couple caveats to my playthrough. One, and this is one of the things why I brought up in the teleportation, I am not fast traveling anywhere. I am walking everywhere. The other thing is I'm starting off on legendary mode. As much as my wife over here says that she likes, to feed on your tears, she was feeding off mine quite a bit during this playthrough. And one of the bullet points I have on here, I'll go into why I was crying.
Every time he died, I would just sit in my chair and giggle because he was having just such a hard time, and I thought it was just so funny trying to watch him not teleport and just die every.
Yeah, it was really bad. The type of character that I always play, and when the Elder Scrolls Online comes out, I will be playing there, is I play a Templar. And actually, before they even announced the Templar class, that's every time I made a custom class, that's what I made. I always like playing the Holy Warrior archetype in every game I play. It's just the play style that I enjoy. This time I decided I was going to try something that's the same but a little different, and it actually bit me in the bum later on. I generally go two-handed sword, but this time I went one-handed sword and magic. So I was carrying both destruction, I like the flames, um, and restoration magic on my one hand and sword on the other. I like this playstyle, it's really cool. I also carry a bow with me at all times. I've played games, and this is one thing that always annoys me, is when I play my Holy Warrior archetype in most games, I have no ranged abilities. I'm just kind of standing there. You know what brings to mind is the scene of Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings, with the elves shooting at all the stuff, and there's Gimli with his axe going, "Send them to me!" Because I can't do anything. I have no weapons.
Whenever we try and do a playthrough, I'm always the sneaky type, and he's always that just run in, guns a blazing, swords a swinging kind of type. So when we went into a mine or a dungeon together, he's already halfway through the dungeon, and I'm sneaking around every corner, pew pewing the elves, the Falmir in the face, taking my time. It takes me 2 hours to get through one of these mines, and he's done in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's generally the play style I play. I don't really pull in stealth or anything. I do from time to time when I'm stealing books and ingredients and potions, but I generally play that upright guy. So I start my game, and I created my Nord, and I always have to make them look like me. In fact, I actually started growing a beard only because in the beta of Elder Scrolls Online, I couldn't make a character that looked like me without doing a beard, so I decided to grow a beard, and I love it. But anyway, off topic. Create my character. I'm in chains next to Ulfric, and they call me up, ask me, who am I? I said, I'm a Nord from Skyrim. The damn Imperials decide to still send me to the damn block. So, I'm marching over, get down on my knees, get ready to face my death and begin into Sovngarde, being sent to Sovngarde, when Alduin comes and frees us from that. You've all played the starter, I'm sure, and that's where we were. I come out, and the first thing that after we get out of the tutorial area, if you will, and you step out of that sewer and look out at the world, that's where I was, standing on top of that hill with what's his Roloff standing there going, hey, let's go to Riverwood. And I go, okay, let's go to Riverwood. So I'm sitting there, I'm wearing some light armor this time. So I put on the Imperial light armor. I still hold on to the Imperial heavy armor because I love the look of it. And I'm always kind of a heavy armor player. I start marching down and walking through the fields and picking any flowers and whatever I could find. And I pass the Ember Shard mines. I was going to go in, but I decided, you know what? I'm not going to go in right now. I'm going to finish my trek to Riverwood, and I'm going to hang out there for a little bit. So I go back into Riverwood. I sell off the immense amount of gear, which, by the way, I am over encumbered at this point because I looted everybody. I stripped them bare, and I'm carrying all the stuff. Base is looking over at me in my playthrough. She's like, why are you walking? I'm like, I'm over encumbered. She goes, why don't you drop something? I'm like, no, I'm not dropping anything in this playthrough. If I pick it up, I'm carrying it till the end. So I am walking from the exit of that sewers to Riverwood. Not very far, but my goodness, it took me probably 35 minutes to do. I decided I'm not going to go through the Ember Shard mines being loaded up because I've been in there before and I know there's some bandits and there's a lot of treasure in there, as well as ore and things like that. I wanted to work on my smithing. So I go to Riverwood, I sell off all my stuff. They plead me to go to Whiterun, but I'm a busy guy and I don't want to go to Whiterun right now. The dragon will be off in the mountains somewhere. I don't care. I'm fine. So I walk around and I decide I'm going to grab a follower because I'm not dropping anything. I need a follower. The only follower available without using mods off the start is Fendril. You have to do the quest with him. He comes up to you and he's like, I think I've seen you talking to that Sven, that bard. And I didn't know who in creation this Sven was. And I'm like, I'm not talking to any Sven. He's like, oh. Well, he goes on and he tells me his story how he is pining for this woman that works at the local trader, but the bard Sven is also doing the same, and he fears that he's going to lose this woman to Sven, which he's a dirty, dirty Bosmer, so he should. But I decided to help him out because I don't like Sven because he's a jerk. I go up, he gives me a letter saying that this letter is from Sven to give it to Camellia. I decide not to. I give it to Sven. Say, look, Fendrel's writing a nasty letter about you saying you're talking all these bad things, and I'm not going to turn it in. He goes, ooh, that's it. I'm going to write up a nasty letter, and you give it to her, say it's from Fendrel. Well, just judging from the greeting I got from Sven right off the bat was, if you're interested in a woman, don't even think about it, because I've already been there. This guy's kind of a jerk, and I really don't want to help him. So I take the letter, and I give it to Camellia. She looks at it, and she goes, this is from Sven. He wants me to think Fendrel would say these terrible things. She immediately dismisses him and thanks me and says I should go talk to Fendrel. So I do. I walk out, and I say, hey, Sven's not going to bother her anymore because now she thinks he's garbage. He is so overjoyed, he joins my cause. So I have him follow me as a follower, and we begin our trek into the Ember Shard mines. Generally, it's not too much of a problem. We get down. There's some bandits in there. I'm trying to be a little stealthy because I'm wearing the light armor and I got the bow. I'm sneaking through the mines, and I see the guard outside the treasure room, and I pull back my bow. I'm breathing very heavily, calming my breathing, letting the arrow fly. Arrow flies through the air. Clang! Hits off a bar on the gate. Crap! The guard's alerted. He comes running around the corner at me, shouts at me, and I'm like, all right, let's go. I stand up, pull out my sword, and we clash. This is the first experience I've had on Legendary, and I take a swing at him and I graze him, and his health barely goes down. And he swings at me, and my health goes down by like a quarter, and I'm like, oh dear heaven. And I try to sneak back. I'm pulling back, and Fendrel's behind me, plucking the guy with arrows. I'm doing everything within my power to stay alive. We finally managed to get him down. I strip him bare, naturally. And we continue through the dungeon. The rest of the dungeon, as you guys know, is probably not super exciting. More bandits. We clear that out. I get all the treasure. And I decide to do some smelting at the mine.
Pretty much, he just leaves a trail of naked bodies in his wake. I like where this is going.
That's how I play. I'm very much that kind of guy. We get through Ember Shard, and we're both kind of overburdened, so we decide we're going to head back to Riverwood. Somewhere along the way, though, and I have no idea how I did this, I get lost. I mean, I've been in Skyrim, so in reality, I'm not lost. But we end up across the river, and we come across a house, just standing out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm going through, and we decide to stop by. There's an old woman there, very nice old woman named Anise. I sat and I chatted with her for a few minutes, and she's like, I'm just an old woman. You don't have to bother me, but it's nice that you stopped by and talked to me. She was very nice. I decided to go into her house, and Fendrel was outside, kind of keeping her company. And I'm just plucking around through her house, and I'm seeing some books, so I pick them up and I'm reading through, just seeing what she's interested in reading. And then something catches my eyes out of the corner, and I look. Huh, there's a little bit of hay over there. There's a trap door beside her bed. I decide I'm going to sneak in and find out what is going on. This little house, there's a secret little entrance down there. I open up the grate and I crawl down. When I get down there, my eyes are greeted by a dark hue from candlelights on the wall. There's a musky smell in the air. And I look around. It's a basement. But there's something wrong with this basement. It's not like a normal basement. I'm looking, There are alchemy ingredients. There is a spell crafting table and an alchemy table, as well as other reagents used in spell casting. I notice on one of the tables there's a letter, and I carefully grab the letter and I open the letter and I read it. It is a letter that Anise was composing to another woman somewhere, I don't know where, um, urging her to come out to her little shack and join her. Her sister would be on the way, and they would have the perfect start for their coven. That's it. I stumbled upon a witch's coven. Not knowing what to do, I put the letter back down and I crawl back outside, hoping beyond hope that I wasn't noticed. I walk outside and Anise is standing there, looking at me, staring into my eyes, going, "So you've uncovered my secret. Unfortunately, I can't allow you to live." She now knows that I know she's a witch, and she tries to do away with Fenril and I. Sadly, we had to put her down, and we moved on. We got back to Riverwood. We unloaded all of our goods, and I stopped by the Riverwood Trader again. And inside, I met the proprietor of the establishment, who was having an argument with Camilla, who I talked to just shortly before. There was a robbery, and they are missing their golden claw. That was the only thing that was stolen. She wants to go after them. He doesn't want her to. I offer to go with Fendril and I. We decide we're going to go up. We will help you out. They tell us it is in Bleak Falls Barrow. So we were like, all right, Bleak Falls Barrow. It's hard to miss. We saw it coming down the hill. It's always, our town looms in the shadow of this place. So we decide we're gonna walk over towards Bleak Falls Barrow. On our way, though, we end up getting lost and ended up in a pass that connects Falkreath and Whiterun provinces, the Brittle Shin Pass. We walk in, and the first thing we notice is there's corpses on the ground and skeletons. We had found the lair of a necromancer holding up in the Brittle Shin Pass, possibly killing anyone trying to use this pass to cross between Falkreath and Whiterun. Doing our civil duty, we dispatch of the necromancer, come out the other side, realize we are in Whiterun. We're nowhere near Bleak Falls Barrow, so we pack our bags and go back through Brittle Shin Pass and eventually make our way up the mountain to Bleak Falls Barrow. Bleak Falls Barrow, as we venture in, there's bandits and some Draugr and things of that nature. We find the thief caught in a web. He offers to give us the claw if only we cut him down. So I cut him down, and him being the thief and swindler that he is, goes, "Nah, I'm not going to give this to you," and runs off. He is unfortunately killed by one of the many booby traps that accompany Nordic runes. So I go up to him, we loot his body, and we find the golden claw, as well as his journal, which says that he's uncovered the secrets of the claw and what the ancient Nords were hiding. We continue through the dungeon, fighting our way through Draugr, through spiders, through skeletons, until we find the lock gate where the golden claw goes. We figure out the riddle on the golden claw, we open the gate, we pass on through to the crypt within Bleak Falls Barrow, the main crypt. And at this point in time, my follower, who is ever the stater of the obvious, goes, "I don't like the looks of this place," as we look up over this bridge at a single tomb on a raised pedestal and a wall with ancient glyphs on it. I look at Fendril and go, "Yeah, thank you for stating the obvious there, good sir. I don't like the look of this place either." We continue in and find that it was indeed a dragon wall, where the dragon priests had written in the dragon language part of their lore. And that's where I learned the power of Foos, the push shout. We dispatch the Draugr that was guarding it, and I find the fabled dragon stone, which marks these burial sites and these dragon words throughout Skyrim. We trek off immediately to Whiterun at this point because we need to alert the Jarl of Whiterun that there are dragons coming and that I just found this awesome, awesome stone that has all this stuff. We get to Whiterun, and he tells me you've seen a dragon. We fight the. He sends us off to fight the dragon. After I talk to his wizard, who says, "Hey, I need you to go find this dragon stone, of which I already have." I give him the dragon stone, and he translates it, and we have to go fight this dragon. We face off with the dragon out at the Eastern Watchtower. We make our way there. I meet Irilith and her parade of guards, and we run up to the tower. As soon as we get to the tower, the guards inside the tower are screaming at us to stop, that it's still here somewhere. It picked off people trying to run away. So I get down low in stealth, and we wait, and then we hear the dragon coming. The dragon swoops down and splashes fire on all of us. I'm sitting there with my arrows plinking at this guy, and the arrows are bouncing off its hide, it seems, on legendary mode. He finally lands, and after many, many slain guards and myself having to go toe-to-toe with this dragon, we slay it, and I absorb the soul, becoming Dragonborn. The next part of my adventure really is going back, telling the Jarl of Whiterun that I have slain this dragon. But on the way back, we hear summon from High Hrothgar. The Greybeards are summoning me to see them. We adventure a little bit within Whiterun. I buy my first home in Breezeholm, at which point I say goodbye to Fendril, the dirty little wood elf, and I pick up my much more attractive Lydia, who, up until a little later, is the love of my life. Don't tell my wife over there.
It's all right. She was my love in Skyrim for a while too, so I completely get it. It's okay.
Hey, she's always there to help us. As I'm as we're exploring a bit, I decide to leave Whiterun and just look around and explore as what we do in an Elder Scrolls game. And this is where I really start hitting the hard parts of Legendary. I come across a cave called the Greywatch Cave. Greywatch Cave. I walk inside thinking, I picked up a quest while I was in Whiterun to find a sword. I didn't have my journal up, so I didn't know where it was looking, but I sort of figured, oh, this must be where it is, because I thought I remembered it was in a cave over here to the east of Whiterun. Unfortunately, no, there were trolls in there. And those trolls kicked my bum. I am running through this cave with my destruction magic in one hand. I am slashing at these trolls, but their regeneratory abilities are keeping them from dying. Lydia and I are slashing and slashing at these trolls. But no matter what we do, we cannot kill these guys. We cannot do enough damage, even with casting fire magic on these guys, to drop their life down. So we do the only honorable thing to do, and we run for our lives like little girls. We make it back to Whiterun, barely, and I decide I'm going to join the Companions Guild, and we're going to start off that quest chain. At this point in time, I meet the other love of my life, Ayla, and I absolutely adore Ayla from the Fighters Guild.
I definitely don't, because of what the Companions Guild, what they have to do to be in the Companions Guild. I no, definitely don't like her. Lydia is where my heart lies when it comes to women in Skyrim.
I'm looking mostly at the physical aspects of Ayla, and that's about it. Moving on from that subject, I talk with them. We do one little quest for them, one of the Radiant quests, where I have to fist fight one of the guys to stop a brawl. Again, legendary almost kicks my bum, and a fist fight takes me 15 minutes to beat. I don't know how it didn't disqualify me because the only way I could live was to put my restoration magic in one hand and line of sight the enemy, trying to keep him away when my health got low. It took me 15 minutes to beat this guy. It was insanely difficult. Um, After doing that, I get the first part of the actual story quest where we have to go and recover a shard of Wuthrag. It's at the Duskman's Cairn. At this point, I have to say goodbye to Lydia because Falkus from the Fighters Guild is supposed to be my shield brother for this event, and I cannot have two followers. So Lydia and I part ways. She goes back to my home in Breeze Run, hopefully to make me a sandwich or something. And I continue on to Duskman's Cairn. Along the way, however, I decide to stop at Silent Moon's camp. It's right on the way, not really too much out of the way. I just have to go north a little bit. And again, the legendary comes into play. I'm fighting these guards. I'm trying to sneak, but I wasn't really paying attention, so I took my sneak off to run a little bit, and the archers spotted me. I had 3 of them on me. I'm like, oh no! I had 2 archers and a caster. I am kiting these guys for like 20 minutes trying to get them and whittle their health down without dying. I'm hiding behind rocks. It looked like an adventure movie. I am crouched down behind this rock with my restoration magic going off. I go, all right. I go around the corner, all of a sudden you hear twang and the arrow bouncing off the rock, and I have to hide back behind the rock again. It was insanely thrilling. Somehow I managed to kill these guys, and we move on. And I decide, all right, I'm going to clear out this place. I walk my way up the mountain, and that's where I find the chieftain, if you will. But it's not really a chieftain, it's a caster. The caster one-shot me with lightning, and I died. I had to start over from a earlier save, which is right outside the White Moon's camp again, Silent Moon's camp again. So I decided, all right, this time I'm going to do it right. I'm going to try to stealth a little bit and pluck off maybe 1 or 2 of them without having to fight all 3 at once again. I'm stealthing, and I'm coming up and I'm watching them, and all of a sudden I see the guards come running down the hill. And I'm going, oh no, they've spotted me, but how? I'm still hidden. And this is where we have a very dark part of Skyrim history, known as the Mudcrab Massacre at Silent Moon's camp. The legendary mode, the mudcrabs are insanely difficult. I'm thinking these guys are running from me, but actually no, at this exact time an elk had started running across the path, and them being bandits and hunters started to attack. Again, as earlier said in the introduction, how one thing I love about the world is it moves on whether I'm there or not. The hunter saw an elk, it wanted to hunt the elk. It's shooting at the elk and somehow managed to aggro the mud crab. The mud crab is then coming up the hill after these guys and is attacking them. I'm sitting there in the grass looking, and the sad part is the mud crab is killing them. The 3 guys that I had spent probably 10-15 minutes trying to kill earlier were wiped out by this mud crab. I come up, this mud crab just gets done killing the last of the 3, and it has about 25% health left. I just pluck it with a few arrows and it dies. I'm thinking I need a pet mud crab going forward, because these things are beastly on legendary. So I save because I know that caster's up there again. I crawl up the mountain, trying to stay stealthy. I see the guy, pull my arrow back. Boom. Health goes down a little bit. All right, new arrow. Boom. All right, health's down again. New arrow. Zap. I go flying off the mountain. I'm dead again. At this point in time, I realize that my light armor and my lack of enchantments for magic is really hurting me, and I make a mental note to come back to Silent Moons at a different time, because I'm getting tired of being electrocuted by this spellcaster. I leave that place behind, and I continue on to the Dustman's Cairn. This is probably the hardest part of my journey so far. I have never died more times in one place than I have in there. And again, the guy who's going to join the podcast later on, he was on the phone with me while we were playing this. I was in there for 2 hours and I died more times in that one dungeon than I have in my 500 plus hours of other games in Skyrim. I will tell anyone who's interested in starting legendary mode, this is not for the faint of heart. It is so difficult. It is almost not fun. It is difficult. Now, it is very rewarding when you do manage to clear something, but I'll tell you what, going through Dustman's Cairn, a 2 hour trek through Dustman's Cairn, almost made me want to go lower the difficulty, maybe to master or something. I stuck through it, and after wave upon wave of bandits and killing them, I finally emerge triumphant with the Shard of Wuthrag, found out the secret that Falkus didn't want to tell me, and I get a trusty new silver sword, because I needed one. I emerge from Dustman's Cairn, and that's the end of my story for this show. I hope everyone enjoyed that part as much as I enjoyed playing that. Beast, what do you think about my insane story through Skyrim so far?
I fed off of his tears the entire time he was in Duskman's Cairn. It was pretty enjoyable sitting in the same room with him as he's dying every 5 minutes. it I had played on master difficulty for a while, and just playing on master, I had to lower the difficulty because it wasn't enjoyable. It just wasn't fun because it was so difficult. And being the stealthy kind of person, I don't have the heavy armor. I don't have the strong swords or the shields. All I pretty much have is my bow, my arrows, and my dinky little daggers. And it was just way too difficult for me. And so I give him a lot of credit for playing that long on legendary.
Yeah, it actually, I don't know what possessed me to want to go light armor for this, but after that playthrough through Dustman, I went back to Whiterun, sold all of it. I spent 3 perk points. I said, you know what? I'm out 3 perk points. I put back on my trusty heavy armor, and I have to stick to a playstyle that I know well, because this legendary is definitely kicking my bum. But definitely enjoyable, and I can't wait to continue that adventure and let you guys know for the next episode where we end up. All right, moving on. The next part of our podcast is we want to do a dramatic reading of a book from the Elder Scrolls series. Once ESO launches, we're actually going to go through and we'll be selecting books that we get from the game there, so that way everything is lore friendly on the show to the events of Elder Scrolls Online taking place during a time period called the Interregnum in the Second Era. A lot of the books that show up in the later games wouldn't have any relevance, such as anything related to Tiber Septim and the Third Empire, because that doesn't happen for about another 500 years. The Oblivion Crisis, the war in Skyrim, we kind of want to keep everything lore appropriate. So I'm going to do my best when picking books randomly until the launch of the game that they are older in the lore. For this week, seeing as we are doing an Elder Scrolls Online podcast, and one of the main goals of that game is to become the Emperor, we have chosen the book, The Amulet of Kings. And my wife, Thais, she will be doing a reading of that book.
The author of The Amulet of Kings is Wenengrus Monhona. In the first years of the First Era, A powerful race of elves called the Iliads, or the Heartland High Elves, ruled central Tamriel with an iron hand. The high and haughty Iliads relied on their patrons, the treacherous Daedra lords, to provide armies of Daedra and dead spirits. With these fearless magical armies, the Iliads preyed without mercy upon the young races of men, slaughtering or enslaving them at their whim. On behalf of the suffering human races, Saint Alessia, the first in the line of Cyrodiils, sought the aid of Akatosh, the dragon god of time, and ruler of the noble Aedra. Akatosh, looking with pity upon the plight of men, drew precious blood from his own heart, and blessed Saint Alessia with this blood of dragons, and made a covenant that so long as Alessia's generations were true to the dragon blood, Akatosh would endeavor to seal tight the gates of oblivion, and to deny the armies of Daedra and undead to their enemies, the Daedra-loving Iliads. In token of this covenant, Akatosh gave to Alessia and her descendants the Amulet of Kings and the eternal dragon fires of the imperial city. Thus does Alessia become the first gem in the Cyrodiilic Amulet of Kings. The gem is the red diamond in the middle of the amulet. This is the symbol of the empire, and later taken as the symbol of the septum line. It is surrounded by 8 other gems, one for each of the divines. So long as the empire shall maintain its worship of Akatosh and his kin, and so long as Alessia's heirs shall bear the Amulet of Kings, Akatosh and his divine kin maintain a strong barrier between Tamriel and oblivion, so that mortal man need never again fear the devastating summoned hosts of the Daedra lords. But if the empire should slacken in its dedication to the 9 divines, or if the blood of Alessia's heirs should fail, then shall the barriers between Tamriel and the Daedric realms fall, and Daedra worshippers might summon lesser Daedra and undead spirits to trouble the races of men.
That was awesome. Excellent work. As always, this book was taken from the Imperial Library website. If you're interested in reading any books from the Elder Scrolls games, you can find all of them there. Now we want to move on to our community spotlight. This is something that I want to do as part of branching out in a community, because if a podcast is nothing more than a branch out in the community, I want to go ahead and acknowledge other great members of our community, the Elder Scrolls community, and kind of give a nod in their direction. The community spotlight we've chosen for this week is, if you're a lore nut like myself, there's a great podcast that I've been listening to for a while now. It's actually 2 years old, actually, this month. It is the Elder Lore Podcast. It's an excellent podcast, and it's very enjoyable to listen to if you love the lore of the Elder Scrolls universe. It's not very long, generally. A couple, 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little longer, depending on the story being told. But the podcaster goes to great lengths to really flesh out the lore of the Elder Scrolls universe and show how deep it really is. One of my personal favorites was actually a series of podcasts he did called The 36 Lessons of Vivek, where he went through and analyzed the books, The 36 Lessons of Vivek, from Morrowind. And it really got into some pretty deep stuff there that you really wouldn't think about. But it was fantastic to listen to. You can find that podcast on iTunes by searching for Elder Lore, or by going to their website, elderlore.wordpress.com. I encourage you to go out and give it a listen, subscribe to it. It is a wonderful lore podcast for the Elder Scrolls. Okay, this is the final part of our show for the evening, where if we had any fan emails, we would answer them here, or we give our final thoughts on this episode. Thais, ladies first, why don't you go ahead and give us your final thoughts for this episode? Tell us how you feel this went, being our pilot episode, and anything else you would like to say to our listeners.
I feel that this podcast went fantastic. It was a lot of fun. It was a great first podcast, and I definitely enjoyed reading that book. That was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to reading more of the books in the future, and I look forward to delving deeper into my stories and my experiences in Skyrim. I will try and die a lot this week in Skyrim, so I have interesting stories to tell.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Thais, for joining me. And she will be a recurring co host as long as she doesn't kill me. Going forward, we will probably be bringing on additional co hosts later on, guest hosts, and things of that nature. People that we feel that want to tell us their stories and their adventures from Tamriel. I want to thank everyone for listening to this podcast. If you want to contact us with questions, comments, criticism, because we definitely need that, you can do so on our website for the show, which is talesoftamriel.wordpress.com, or you can email the show. It is talesoftamrielpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Tales of Tamriel, or by looking us up on Facebook at facebook.com/Tales of Tamriel podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Tales of Tamriel. Have a good evening, all. Thank you.